Hello there, welcome. My name is Konrad Patkowski. I am a chemistry professor at Auburn University in the United States. And my guest today is Bruno von Brüning, a PhD student from the Queen Mary University of London and also a graduate student in the PHYMOL consortium. Welcome, Bruno. Could you please tell us a bit about your research project?
The thing that we are doing is we want to obtain distributed properties for force fields. So what force fields are, this is some physical description of how molecules interact inside each other and with each other, and this requires some parameters that are located at atomic sites. And the big challenge here is to obtain them actually, because they're not physically observable, so we cannot get them from an experiment or anything. It's somewhat more like a mathematical construct that we need to obtain efficient models actually.
So your work involves getting these improved parameters for force fields. Once they're available, what could other researchers do with your new force field?
So the idea is there that these distributed parameters can model both interactions between molecules that are far apart and also to a smaller extent close to each other. And that's for one that's very important for getting classical force fields, conventional ones that just use these parameters alone. But it can be also quite valuable for machine learning force fields to have some kind of hybrid, so some half machine learning, half physical model to fuse that together. And that became quite evident in the recent literature that we actually need that long-range forces for machine learning. So in the long range, you cannot really do that with machine learning too well. And also for the short range, actually, that would help a lot to make it easier to machine learn and use less data in particular.
I'm glad that you brought machine learning, which is of course taking the scientific research by storm these days, and definitely it has some specific requirements. So with these, let's take it a step even further. So what kind of chemical problems can we elucidate with these new force fields?
I mean, the main strength of these machine learning force fields are that they are way cheaper. So in principle, they're only as strong as the data that they're trained on. And in principle, we could reproduce these data for smaller systems or smaller timescales or smaller system sizes and so on. But the big strength is just that it allows us to perform simulations of molecular systems on a larger scale and at a reasonably high accuracy, which we maybe could simulate bigger systems like proteins or the coronavirus, something like that, in very big boxes with a lot of molecules, but not at the right accuracy to really recover all effects and get accurate predictions. And that's something that machine learning unlocks to a good extent, and we can just make more reliable predictions for chemistry.
So it's very important to get these machine learned force fields that can attack big systems and then the same are accurate. So in your day-to-day process of improving these force fields, how would you go about doing this?
A large part of that is actually, of course, data collection, because actually the machine learning models, they are somewhat universal. So I'm predicting these properties, right? And usually people are more interested in energies. And of course, these properties lead in the end to energies, but particularly maybe equivariant architectures and the effort in there can be used to predict, for example, multipoles, which are vectors, vectors in space basically, and it's a little bit special properties, but that's something that we are particularly interested in. And you can use more general machine learning architectures for that. So we're not so much researching into how to machine them specifically, how this architecture works, like the system. We are particularly interested actually in getting data, because you need data to machine learn in the first place. And we are first interested in getting the most accurate and best data, so to say, and on the other hand, to also machine learn it then and see the actual performance of that.
So I think some of us might be wondering if the data is something that you calculate yourself. Can you search the literature for it? What are the ways of getting this actually?
At some point, you ideally want this data to be shared and somebody has to produce it. In my case, we actually want to produce some data. So for some multipoles, these are the distributed properties that we want to compute. Like there are already data sets for that, but we discovered like recently, or there was a novel method that actually appears better, and that's actually a benchmarking like collection of data where I've shown that this new method, the ELISA, is better than the MBIS, which was the previous conventional for a thing what was used for dataset creation, and it's more promising actually. And what we are doing at the moment is generating data and machine learning this new method and comparing the performance of each other. What we already know though is that the data promises more accuracy for the same kind of data, basically for the same representation that we obtain, like the accuracy is higher.
All right, so validating a new approach and you see that it just outperforms everything in the field. Gotta be pretty exciting.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we are looking into creating a new data set with this improved method, and then also expand that by not only like adjusting the data to a higher quality, but also creating new data for polarizabilities. And that's actually something new. So polarizabilities are the reaction to an electric field. So the molecule in an electric field shifts its electrons to a different location, and that's these polarizabilities. And they're also quite important because they explain how molecules interact when they come closer to each other and how they shift this charge. And it's an important part of the energy. And and if we create such a data set, people can use that to train their own machine learning model, and that would really help to the eventual goal of intermolecular force fields. And actually, that's a big part of the story. Not only electrostatics we get from the multipoles, but also polarizabilities, which lead us to induction, dispersion terms, and we need all of them together to create a force field. And that would be an important step to get this polarizability data set.
So you're not quite a usual graduate student because you are part of the PHYMOL network, so you interact with other researchers on the broad topic of intermolecular interactions. Could you tell us, please, how did being in PHYMOL influence your research and you as a scientist?
I guess it's amazing to have the contact with other doctoral students. I mean, also to some extent see their journey, just talk about daily life and also just talk about science, of course. I mean, of course, they are slightly different. Everyone has a slightly different topic. It's always great to come together. And I mean, the strongest part of my collaborations are, of course, the secondments. So actually going to another research group and performing works there, and particularly getting the expertise of these research group, because you combine, so to say, two worlds and you become an expert in two slightly different approaches, at least in my case, where I work with, on the one hand, with Alsen, which is an expert in intermolecular interactions and really has a lot to tell, and with Sorbonne Université and my collaborator Thomas Pleder, who works on machine learning models actually, and then I can fuse that together.
So in addition to these different scientific expertise of different PHYMOL leaders, do you see that, say, personality-wise or in terms of the approach to science, do they differ? Do you see that they're giving you, say, different models of how to be a scientist?
I think we all work in a different way, not alone, like we work on different kinds of topics. So maybe some people are doing more machine learning, more coding, some people more into theory or application. And it's interesting to see how these things progress and how the different, basically, I mean, like in science, you have different steps, right? You have more fundamental research, more applied research, and it's really interesting to see how they all come together, because we have students that work at different regions between pure theory and application, actually. And I think that's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and definitely it's nothing like old school science where one person sat on a project for a long time. We all hear about science being collaborative. So do you think that the PHYMOL model is the good one for what it means to collaborate in science?
I think sure. I think it's very important to exchange with other researchers, and due to the PHYMOL project, I automatically get a lot of input from other researchers, also a little bit outside my direct field, right? So it's the field of intermolecular interactions, but there are different things to do, right? And we all come from a little bit different angles, and it's very interesting to just learn about what other people are doing. And yeah, I mean, like different scales of accuracy, different scales of applicability, and so on.
I think you had quite a bit of this diverse experience within PHYMOL, including your secondment and training school. Any particular experience or topic that stands out in your memories from all of these parts of your PHYMOL education?
I mean, I have to say I always had a great time with my peers actually, and it was like we really became like a community, and I really enjoy to see my peers like see the other doctoral students again. But we also really came together for quality scientific experiences, both in the content that was catered to us, like the training schools that we had, the conference we are attending now, but also just talking to them and getting together to talk about the life as a PhD student and the different way people approach problems, I would say.
I think that's a great closing message about what it means to be a scientist, and these interactions between the peers are no less important than just working on a project. So thank you for this insight. My guest today was Bruno von Brüning from London. Thank you for your attention.